of my happiness classes. I do this every week, every Thursday, 7 to 8 p.m. UK time. Let me do a quick intro so you know a couple of other things about the show, class, whatever you want to call it. So you can see what I'm going to say over here. I'm just reading through it very quickly. It might be useful for you, and it also covers all the mess around in this bedroom that I'm doing this live stream from, by having a smaller screen. Yeah, you won't see the junk on the side. Anyway, so let's quickly do this. So interactive. Yes, please ask me questions anytime. The first half hour of this 1 hour class, you please ask me questions about the topic of the lesson, which is going to be how to have a better government. And I'm going to explain why that's got anything to do with happiness in a bit. Second half hour, ask me anything at all, anything you want. This class is based on Islam. So why? Because of its unique qualities. It's universal. It's the only religion that says it's for everybody. You might think that all religions are supposed to be for everybody, but if you read into their scriptures, you'll find out otherwise. For example, Christianity, Jesus said he's only came for the Jews, but anyway, you can ask me about that if you want. It's actually quite well known, these kind of facts. It's the only religion that's totally logical. So a lot of religions, well, pretty much all religions expect you to believe all sorts of things. But Islam consistently says, look into the world, look at the universe. So all the evidence is there, all sorts of stuff. It's 100% scientific. Islam is 100% scientific. Other religions, for example, say the universe was created in 6 days. All sorts of things like that. In fact, Islam tends to be is always ahead of science, and I could give lots of examples of that. So when I say ahead of science, it means that Islam would say something, and then it'll be later on proved after hundreds of years to be exactly true. Like Islam says, the expansion of the universe. The universe is expanding, and talked about black holes and all sorts of things, and didn't call it black holes. It just described black holes. And then even Einstein had a problem with that, and eventually he gave up and said, yes, the universe is expanding. So, or in short, Islam is very unique in lots of very important ways. If we didn't have those kind of basic things, then it'll be difficult to have a sensible or logic based happiness class, because I want you to not just believe in things, but I want to prove to you that the things I'm saying are very useful. But those things that I'm teaching, I couldn't have figured out and by myself. It had to be Islam and God basically that explained them, and then we use the science to prove it. And when I say it's universal, another thing I want to say is that Islam actually believes in the truth of the origins of all religions, but they got corrupted over time, and they were meant to in many ways be corrupted, because all these other religions had a sell-by date, like when those religions were supposed to have served their purpose, and now Islam was the first and only universal religion, which is all you need now. So you don't need these other religions, but they have their purpose in different ways, but we can talk about that later on. If you have any questions and you are not ready to ask them in this live show, post them in comments of any of my YouTube videos. So I make YouTube videos every day. But post a comment in this video as well, in the comments rather than the live chat. I mean, in the live chat as well. That'd be great. I'm always seeing them and I'm always answering them, and I can save those questions for this show, for the next show rather, or any future show. But always give short answers in the comments anyway. So yeah, please comment in any of my YouTube videos. I get notifications, and that's a way of posting questions for this show if you prefer to do it that way. All previous classes and the entire course, this happiness course, is available on the homepage at bigquestionsanswered.com. There's also a text summary, so written summary of everything I'm going to say for the class. That's also available at bigquestionsanswered.com. So what else is there? I'm always looking for feedback. So if you have any suggestions for how this class could be better, please message me on, again, a YouTube video comment or something, or just email me. And my email is available on the contact page of bigquestionsanswered.com. So let's get on with it. Here we go. So this is the text summary, by the way. I'm going to read through it, hopefully get through it within half an hour, and then talk about it and answer any questions you have about it. Okay. So the topic for today is government for a better world. So, yep. So I have 7 sections always. The first section is called reflection. And I'll start with a quote from Prophet Muhammad. So it's always some bit of wisdom is used to explain what I'm going to say. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Your leaders will be as you deserve." Sadly, it's become normal for us to hear of children being murdered in poor countries by our Western armies under the direct or indirect orders of our political leaders. It is also our leaders who let the rich get away with crimes and instead have the poor pay for them, as in the case of the international financial crash. There are far more serious crimes that our politicians are guilty of. It is therefore very important that we learn a method for finding good leaders. You might ask why other people's problems, children being murdered around the world, have anything to do with there's always I should have mentioned I do this. I prepare for this show in a great rush, so this text summary is written in a lot of rush, far from perfect. So you can see a grammatical error just in there. So you might ask why other people's problems, such as being murdered, okay, has anything to do with your personal happiness. As I've tried to explain in previous happiness classes, it is in serving other people that happiness lies, but also our environment affects our happiness. So we need to improve our governments so that the country and world we live in is a more beautiful one. What is possible is almost unimaginably better than the relatively poor state of the world today. So maybe that sentence was a bit difficult to understand. What I'm saying is, I want to make the world a better place. And what is possible is infinitely almost better than the world where we're living in. And there's lots of evidence of that already, because there are places where we practice bits of Islam and it's a beautiful thing. It makes the world so much better. Okay. There is a method for finding good leaders that we have missed because we have been too busy blaming others for our problems. We have not been reflecting on how we ourselves are at the root of the problem of corrupt political leaders. So, should have said, okay, so I made a quote in the beginning and I'm going to explain that quote. The quote was, "Your leaders will be as you deserve." And I'm about to explain, what does that mean? How does that work? We are to blame for our corrupt leaders for a couple of reasons. Firstly, our leaders are not aliens from space, they are from our societies. If our society is corrupt, then we can only choose corrupt leaders from that society. You might argue that our leaders come from an elite group. For example, the largest percentage by far of Britain's prime ministers went to Eton College. But our leaders cannot escape society. The institutions that make it possible for such an elite group to grow only thrive in a corrupt society. That is because corrupt societies allow corrupt people more opportunities for their plans. I just want to repeat. I'm looking every now and then in that corner. If the question pops up, I'll answer it. Ask a question anytime. Yeah. ask a question anytime about what I'm talking about, or if you just have a random question, just ask it and I'll ask it and answer it in the second half where the random questions time is. Protesting, second section. Prophet Muhammad said, work for unity and not discord. Discord, by the way, is not a chat app, as many children might think. It means fighting, disunity, disharmony, and stuff like that. Okay, it's a bit weird that a chat app would be called Discord. I wonder. Anyway, so in theory, a protest is just a way of getting attention for a cause, but in practice, it is about pointing fingers, blaming others for a problem. Besides the problems I have already talked about with playing the blame game, protesting causes factions in society to grow instead of the unity needed to make any serious progress as a society. We need to explain to people and bring them over to ideas that will benefit all of us, which takes patience, rather than blaming them, which is easy. By protesting, we cause hate to spread in the cracks of a broken society. These are the divisions that evil politicians take advantage of. Politicians are becoming popular in Europe and many other places around the world by hating certain groups of society. As society depends on all of us, hating a certain group makes us weaker. So only the politicians that preach hate and division benefit, and society loses. Some people say that protests have had an effect in the past. That is incorrect. They happened when change was already being brought about by consistent action by increasing numbers of people. So lots of people were doing very important things consistently. That's a very important part of change. Not just like I feel like doing it today, like a protest is, then forgetting about it. And also, I could give different examples. By the way, this is a summary I'm reading, just giving people ideas of what they could possibly respond to if you don't agree with it. Oh, cool, got a question. Okay. Um, so I'll read it. How, and then I'll probably copy paste it or something to make it big somewhere. How, oh, let's do this. Cool. How is it fair if leaders are as corrupt as the society they are from? I'm saying this because the majority of people are corrupt or not good in another way, and only the minority of people are good. That's a great question. Why? How can it be fair that a few people who are good have to suffer because of everybody else who's not so good? Okay, or you know, maybe then they're not 100%, everybody else might not be 100% evil, but they're just not good enough to get together to unite as a community and all this kind of stuff. So a bit selfish, you know. So how is that fair? That's a really good question. It's just it ties in generally with the question of suffering, because suffering can seem really unfair. Why is it that, say, if your parent was an alcoholic, that you have to get beaten up every day or something? Because that's often the case. You didn't do anything good, bad. Your parents did something bad. So why is it that God has allowed it? If God is all powerful and things like that, why is it possible that um, you know other people suffer because of yeah, basically. So anyway, the answer, the Quran actually explains this very interesting situation. And a sort of mini story when God was about to create man, who was the only man, as in human beings, which is supposed to be the only creation that has um, a freedom of to do whatever they want to do. What's the word? Free will. Okay. The angels are saying, why do you need to create this thing that has free will? Because it's going to cause havoc and bloodshed. Where aren't we good enough? We angels, we just won't do anything wrong. We won't make a mess of things. We already, you know, appreciate this beautiful world. This human creature thing is just going to cause trouble. And so God gives an initial answer, and that is God knows the depth and ability of human beings, of or the nature of the world. So I fully know the nature of the heavens and the earth, which kind of sounds like it's not really an answer, like I know everything, trust me, sort of thing. But it's not really that. It's because the question of suffering is a bit messy for a human mind, which has kind of a limited understanding of, what's possible. Okay, so what's possible, and also the nature of suffering for each person is a bit complicated. So, for example, we might think somebody is poor and therefore they're suffering, but actually, the really rich person is suffering far more because they don't seem to have a purpose or anything. But a poor person, and often is the case, they will be they will not be surrounded by technology, therefore they've surrounded themselves with people instead. And I've seen this in some poorer countries like Gambia, and they're much happier because of it. Okay, so suffering and understanding of the nature of the whole world and everything is complex, but that's only a brief answer. I think I'm going to try to give a shorter answer and then explain it. The short answer is, why should it be that a few people suffer because of a greater number of people? It's because this whole world, and the great benefit of having human beings, is that they can become beautiful creatures if they follow the guidance and teachings of God. And the guidance and teachings of God is to develop human beings. Okay. And you might say, why play this strange game of developing human beings? Um, so everything can be perfect, but there is little that can be compared to somebody, let's say, or a human being who has got free will, who gives up their free will for other people's sake. So what I'm trying to say is, it's opportunity to be beautiful, to do something amazing that is priceless. And that is, if you are one of the few people, and it often will be the nature of change will be that most people are living their life blindly, or blindly through greed and selfishness, but it will only be a few people who are the ones who are going to take the burden and make the difference, and eventually everybody else will benefit or follow, because it'll be too obvious eventually, right? Okay. It'll be too obvious what is right and what is wrong. When more people do a thing, then it becomes obvious. When there are less people, those few people are considered lunatics, even though they're doing the right thing. So I'll give you a couple of short answers. I know I've given a long answer, but I'm going to give you a short answer. The people who make the changes are actually the one who benefit the most. Okay, even if they have to go through the most suffering, as it were, because when you do good things, you feel so good for it, and much, you feel like your life has meaning. And the rest of the people who are being evil, they're not benefiting from it. When you do evil things or bad things or selfish things, even though a little bit selfish, you suffer from it. You feel like your life is pointless. And that's what's happening around in the West. People have so much stuff and they're supposedly just enjoying themselves, but they report higher and higher levels of depression. So if I really trying to summarize a quick answer, it'd be like, the people who do good, they benefit. They are the real winners, even though they have to take the burden of making the world a better place. And even if oh, by the way, I should say, so the question was something like, why is it fair that a few good people have to suffer from the corrupt society and bad leaders. Well, that opportunity to do good things, okay, helps you grow and makes you feel great, is a short answer. Okay, you can disagree with me, tell me what's wrong with that, whatever, as you wish. But thank you very much for the question. Really appreciate it. Okay, so next section. Actually, have I read it? Why is it that most people who protest feel good? Read this bit, the last bit of that. Feel good that they express their idea, but then do little else to fix the problem for the rest of the year. So I think the sentence could be improved. It means basically like, why do people feel it's okay to have a protest and then kind of forget it for the rest of the year? They don't really do much about it. Okay, that's kind of an exaggeration a little bit, but often the case. They do a lot in 1 second and then they do a little bit of hopefully recycling throughout the year, but not much else. Okay, as human beings, as human beings enjoy social events, protests are exciting, but in practice, they stop us from making the real changes we need because they encourage short term behavior rather than realizing the joy of working on a cause bit by bit every day. So I recommend not going for protests because they affect your mind in a negative way. They make you feel like it's one big party. And my students, I remember they went to environmental protests. There was a students' environmental protest, and they basically admitted it's just one big party. Okay, it's not really taking the environment very seriously. Doing serious means doing something every day, to work towards a cause. That's how things change. Democracy. Okay, God says in the Holy Quran, consult them, that is your people, your subjects, whatever you want to call them, your consult them in matters of administration, and when thou art, bit old English, when you are determined or you've made a decision, then put your trust in Allah, that is God. Surely Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. So, explain that in a bit. Um, Islam does not believe in democracy. If society is corrupt, it will make bad choices and it will plunge into worse problems. That is what we see today. Governments trick their people by gaining popularity with short term tactics like using foreigners as scapegoats, even though the country needs them. That is what is happening in the farming industry in the UK. With all the government's efforts to get local British people to help in their farming industry, they could not. Yet Brexit will make it difficult to get the foreign labour Britain needs. Brexit was about using hate to get popularity, even though the politicians knew that it would damage the country. Cool, Alika. I was thinking you haven't been here for a while. Let's have a look what you've got to say. Well, it raises awareness of anything. It might change voting patterns slightly. Okay, so sure, it can raise awareness. I think we can raise awareness more effectively through seminars and things like that. Although they might sound boring, I think even boring is almost a good measure of how serious we are, rather than effectively having a party. I'm talking about psychology here. So if we feel that we did something big and exciting, then we, because of that kind of attitude, we feel like we've done our bit for the year. Okay, and so I think it's quite damaging. Protests are quite damaging, and as have I talked about protests? I think I've got a section on protest. Yeah, yeah. So so protests in practice, from you probably would seen as well, are really about pointing fingers, saying somebody else is at fault. It's a government's fault. Yeah, but there's a great quote, probably from somebody like Nelson Mandela. People who really believe in change, making a change, and not just talking about it. Okay, he said, somebody said, be the change you want to see in the world. That's how real change makers talk. They talk about changing ourselves and less pointing at other people. Sure, you can advise other people, but making an effort consistently every day is really important. And this idea of being consistent is both an Islamic teaching. That's why I keep talking about this thing about consistency and doing small things consistently. So that's an Islamic idea. There's a saying of Prophet Muhammad: it's better to do things. God loves things that are done regularly, even if small. Um, but it's also an idea that really successful people follow. So there's the idea of getting 1% better every day. So you can search it up on YouTube, and how the amazing success has been brought about by people who follow that sort of approach. Any successful person really knows that things are done over time successfully and whatever. And yeah, jumping up and down in a protest and a party sort of atmosphere, which is what they tend to be, I think really damages a cause. But of course, we don't have to agree. But thank you for the question. That helps me, give me an opportunity to explain more things. And what you're saying, Alika, there is like a thing that lots of people would say. So thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. And I appreciate that you're here. It's really good to see you again here. Okay. So I talked about, what did I say? Democracy. Islam doesn't believe in democracy. So if you've got, I was saying earlier on, if you've got bad people, then you'll make bad choices, because that's what democracy is. Like, what does everybody think? Um, but if the situation of people is bad already, then that's not going to help. It's just going to make things worse. We're going to get more things, more racism and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. Cool. I was just responding to, it's good to be here. I'm glad you are here, Malika. So, the following is better than democracy. So I'm going to explain now. First, develop society's morality so that there are good politicians that can be chosen from it. It's linking back to the saying of Prophet Muhammad that we deserve the people we get. Okay, so we need a good society. You might think from all the YouTube videos out there that our leaders are so much worse than us, and so improving our behavior will not cause us to eventually choose better leaders. I have found a huge amount of corruption, whichever job I have worked in. So, just in the public, I see a lot of corruption. So, I don't think we're actually any better than our leaders, really. Okay. I have found a huge amount of corruption, whichever job I've worked in. They might not kill anyone at work, okay, as do our political leaders through their choices, but that is because we do not have the power to kill people. Instead, we do our jobs incredibly badly, to the extent that we are doing the opposite of what our job requires. And I see this all the time, and probably could go through examples, but we're quite happy to do our jobs really badly. We don't think much of it. We're quite happy to play politics and all sorts of bad things. Um, So, yeah, to the extent we are doing the opposite of job. So, most people consider their bad behavior at work or at home of little consequence. They don't think it's a big deal that they do little bad things, right? This is the same thinking that allows our politicians to simply describe killing millions of innocent people as collateral damage, i.e., accidents that are inevitable. Of course, the killing of innocent people is not inevitable if they could curb their greed and not go around stealing oil, diamonds, and other property of poor countries. So, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. We in society also make excuses for our corruption. As the saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. As we become more powerful, our evils become more obvious. Cool. Got another question. What does it say? Oh, we got half an hour done already. Why aren't there more countries following Sharia? I'm currently reading Kitab al-Siyar al-Saghir, and it's so different from how Muslim countries are today. I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna. Does that government? I suppose I could answer that now. Um, I'm going to save that question for a little bit, um, Alika. That is a brilliant question, and that probably does fit into the category of having good government. But I'm going to save it for the second bit because I'm actually not very professional when it comes to these shows, and I haven't got through the stuff I wanted to read. So I'll roughly read a bit more, and then I'll just go through answering your questions. I'm not sure if I'll stick to the plan of half an hour of this and then half an hour of the other. I'd rather just answer your questions. There's a lot of value, and people can read what this stuff is anyway. Because a text summary, as I say, is available on bigquestionsanswer.com. All the stuff I'm reading right now, but I'll read very quickly and then answer your question, Lika, because it's a great question. Okay, so corruption is the next section. Prophet Muhammad said, deeds are judged by motives. I have talked about how corruption in both ourselves and our leaders is causing our governments to do so much evil, but it is because we are bad that we badly understand corruption that there is so much corruption. Bad things only happen after a person has been thinking and planning them for a long time. Unfortunately, we do not think it is important to control our thoughts, as at that point they do not seem real. What's the big deal with these thoughts? They're not harming anybody, is what I'm basically trying to say. We are so unaware of how bad thoughts are damaging to our happiness and how we act towards others because of them. So we are unaware of how our thoughts affect ourselves and other people, our own happiness and other people's happiness. This is why we suffer so much. Having said that, thoughts do not see having said that thoughts do not seem real, the greatest killers of our times in the West are because of our thoughts. The biggest killer in the West is loneliness, which can be felt even if we're surrounded by people. Loneliness is a thought. Stress is also a thought, and it also one of the biggest killers in the West. So is depression a thought, an illness that is going through the roof in the West? Its numbers are going through the roof, actually. Sentence wasn't correct. In fact, happiness is a thought as well, something quite separate from the amount of things we have bought for ourselves. So thoughts are important. When Prophet Muhammad said, our deeds are judged by God according to the motives of our thoughts behind them, we should realize that every action that God deems bad has a negative effect on our happiness. God has made it like a law of nature that bad behavior ingrains itself on our souls so that we feel bad or depressed if we do something bad. I think I'm just going to quickly summarize it. So you do bad things, you'll feel bad about it. We know about that. There's all these phrases like, how do you sleep well at night? How do you sleep at night if you've done something bad? We kind of know the nature of the connection between doing bad things and feeling bad, and doing good things and feeling good. Okay. And sometimes we don't know that. There's lots of these psychological experiments that are being done to prove what religion is always taught. Okay, so I'm going to really quickly say duties. So this section is about basically if you want to be happy, it's there's only so much government can do. If you really want to make a happy society, don't just rely on government. You've got to make the world a better place. Yeah, there's only limited job that governments have. And yeah, and people are always asking for their rights, but you have to understand that how you get rights is through other people doing their responsibility towards you. There's this dual nature. So in places where people just ask for their rights all the time, okay, they don't really get those rights. What happens is only in societies where people are focused on their responsibility towards society, you don't really hear that. You don't hear that much. Like, it's always blaming other people. That comes back to this idea of protest. That's why I think protests are so damaging. If you, where do we hear on TV, oh, I feel I'm not doing my responsibility towards society? People felt like that, then everybody would get their rights, because responsibility translates into other people's rights, and the world would be a really beautiful place if people behave like that. You know, like doing things for other people. That's a really different mindset. Patience, I'll very quickly say. Um, oh, please ask the questions. Oh, yeah. So, Mr. Cowan, please ask the questions now. Go for it. I'll read them. Yeah. In a bit. Yeah. So, um, just ask them now before you forget or something, I suppose. Anyway, patience. I'm just going to wind up anyway. Patience is absolutely key if you want to be really successful. Please do read the text summary afterwards, and you can comment on the video if you disagree with any of the text summary. But I'm just going to quickly summarize the summary. Patience is absolutely necessary for doing anything important. Okay, the world doesn't change, and if you're patient, you'll really enjoy yourself as well. If you're not patient, you'll hate the process of changing the world is a beautiful thing, but if you're not patient and you want everything done yesterday, which is a common problem due to materialism, I want it now, I want to be happy now, right? Then you'll never really be happy, and you won't enjoy this beautiful thing of making the world a better place. And finally, obedience. So we want a better government, but there's no point having a better government if we don't listen to that government. And governments already realize that we're not particularly obedient. So I'm in the UK, and people are always secretly, popping into each other's houses under the lockdown. Lockdown in UK just means you're not allowed to visit each other's houses because of the pandemic, and people are doing it secretly. And by being disobedient, what happens is, and complaining and protesting a lot as well, what happens is government says, you know what? Oh, we're going to make Freedom Days. What's his name said, our prime minister, and Freedom Day meant, and he did all sorts of things like that, which were really damaging for our, um, for the COVID numbers. Like, he opened schools up to make people happy, but schools are like the number one way to spread the virus, because kids are what we call super spreaders. They don't really get affected by the virus COVID, but they're really good at spreading it. So blah blah blah. That's the summary. And let's answer these really good questions. So back to Alika's question: why aren't there more countries following Sharia? I'm currently reading Gadabul's Siyar al-Saghir. That's great. I don't even know that book, but I know what Sharia is at least. And it's so different from how Muslim countries are today. Okay, so I'd love to know what your understanding of Sharia is, Alika, if you want to comment, because that will help me. But I'll quickly explain this idea of Sharia. First of all, there's no such thing, you didn't say it here, but a lot of people say this thing called Sharia law. There's no real thing called a Sharia law. So in Islam, Islam is very clear. All the teachings of Islam are basically in the Quran. So there's lots of books that might try to explain it. Like anything, like if there's water, there's going to be a scientist who explains it. Everybody knows what water is, but people who spend time studying it can explain it. Like, it's the same with the Quran. If you're too lazy to read the whole Quran, I'm not talking about Alik or anybody. If anybody's too lazy to read the whole Quran, then there'll be people who read it and study it, and they go, okay, this part of the Quran says this, and this part of the Quran says that, and therefore I understand it. So what I'm trying to say in short is the Quran is very like self-explanatory. If you take the time to read it, and that's kind of the main book that you can read, and that's got what we call the Sharia. Sharia just means like the guidance from God. Like, and in the Quran it says that there's no compulsion in matters of religion. That's just a quote from one of the verses of the Quran. So basically it means like it can't be possible that there's a law unless everybody agrees on it, based on Islam. So Islam is just a guidance that each individual chooses to follow. So you can have a law based on Islam if there are, for example, Christians and Jews and whatever, and they say, hang on a minute, we like these laws and we want to, so we like these teachings, we think they should be laws, okay? And yeah, so, and it's happened in Islamic Spain and so many other places where the Christians and Jews and other faiths, they loved the way Muslims ruled, and so they did turn into laws. But anyway, Prophet Muhammad did a very interesting thing, by the way. He actually let Christians follow their own teachings and made the, so in one city he let people follow 3 different laws or something: one Islamic, one Jewish law, one Christian law, I think, whatever, one generally accepted law, maybe 4 different ways of so that's Sharia law. And why do people not follow it? So Muslims around the world will know that Islam is really rarely ever followed properly. So, for example, a really good example, people think Saudi Arabia is an example of Islam, where anybody who knows anything about Islam is like, it's so far away from anything to do with Islam. It's trying to improve itself in some ways, I don't know. But a really good example is that anybody in the world, according to the teachings of Islam, is allowed to visit the Kaaba, which is, the black cube-shaped mosque in Mecca. But the Muslims, the Saudi Arabians say, no, you're not allowed. There's a big sign when you get near Mecca, says only Muslims allowed. It's completely wrong. There are lots of examples where even a group of Christians came to visit Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and they were saying, okay, they were having a meeting with Prophet Muhammad, and then they said, we've got to take a break, we've got to pray somewhere, and they were already, sitting in the mosque, and Prophet Muhammad said, why do you have to go anywhere? This is a house of worship. You can pray in our mosque. So in the same way, Christians should be allowed to pray in the Kaaba, for example, in the vicinity of the Kaaba at least. So that kind of thing. So Islam is not followed in most countries, or very little of it is followed. And why is it not followed much? Well, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that after he would die, there'll be a very short phase in which Islam would be properly followed. It would die, there would be the Khalifas, the rightly guided Khalifas. Khalifa is like maybe your Pope or something. Okay, it's a spiritual leader for all the Muslims. And there were only 4 of them. And after they died, it didn't take too long before all sorts of corruption came about. As Prophet Muhammad prophesied, after these rightly guided Khalifas, the Khalifas, so-called Khalifas, would turn into sort of kings, and then even worse, despots, bad rulers, and then eventually it will be brought back. And so if I'm trying to give a short answer, I am a follower of the resurgence of Islam. I am a follower of a lot of prophecies completed. Sorry, so let me explain it this way. In the latter days, there was supposed to be a guide who was supposed to guide for Islam and the world, who's supposed to come, prophesied by Prophet Muhammad. And at the same time, many other religions all prophesied that their prophets would be coming back. So Jesus said he would come back. Buddha said he would come back in the same time. It's very strange that all these prophets are supposed to come back in the same time. And I'm saying, in short, that they all came from the same God, and they're basically talking about one person. That one person, somebody I follow, his name is Mirza Ghulam Ahmed. If you search Google for the promised Messiah meaning the second coming of Jesus, at least, and that's who I follow. I follow the second coming of Jesus, who's not literally Jesus. And we can talk about that as well, according to even how Jesus talked about second coming and all sorts of things, right? So the short answer is there is a resurgence of Islam. But that's taking a long time. And we ourselves, the people who follow this reuniting and practicing of real Islam, it will take some time, and we are actually persecuted by other Muslims for it. So if you want to know more about us, you can go to my website, bigquestionsanswer.com. We have books and all sorts of things, or just search love for all, hatred for none. So a motto that we're famous for around the world. So I suppose that gives some answer. You can, okay, so let me go through this. So I've got 2 questions. So I'll go through Cown's question, and I've seen some comments by Alika. I'll come back to that in a second. If you had to kill 2 men or 1 woman, which would you kill? That's a interesting question. 2 women. That's weird. That's a weird question. I suppose I just kill one person if I had to choose to kill one person rather than 2 people. Suppose if I had to, um, if that was my only choice. Okay. I've read it along with 4 tafsirs. Okay, using cool words. So tafsir is an Arabic word which means like a translation or commentary or explanation. Okay, so I've read it along about 1,000 hadiths. Lol. Okay, so you've read commentaries and about 1,000 hadiths. So you've read the Quran, I imagine, because the Quran usually has what we call commentaries or tafsirs, and you've read about 1,000 hadiths. Hadith are sayings of Prophet Muhammad, kind of been quoting here. So that's cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to study Islam, Alika. See what else have we got? Alika. The Quran says there is no compulsion, but then you have Muhammad's threatening letter to, to King of Oman. Okay, so I could suppose we could quickly check out. Let's check out the King of Oman's letter. So I know that Prophet Muhammad wrote lots of letters to different kings inviting them to Islam. Remember, he was in a very sort of weak situation, so um, I'm not sure how much threat he could have made when he was basically a lonely person at the time. It's actually quite a brave thing to do if you've got no power and then you invite the greatest kings and emperors of the time to Islam. So let's see. Prophet Muhammad letter to um, King of Oman? King of Oman. Let's see. Muhammad's letter to heads of states. Letter to King of Oman. Let's see it. Oh, okay. Let's make this big. Or make this zoom in, and then I'll try to center it. It's not easy. Oh, do you want to convert to Islam? Apparently, the side of it's asking. Okay, sorry, it's going to be tricky to. It's not really getting this weird advert out of the way. Let's get rid of the advert. Oh my gosh. All right, never mind. I'm just going to read it. Okay, so in the name of Allah, the most great, then beneficent, the most merciful, from Muhammad bin Abdullah to Jafar probably, Abdul Jandi, peace be upon him who follows true guidance. Therefore, thereafter, I invite both of you to the call of Islam. Embrace Islam. Allah has sent me as a prophet to all his creatures in order that I may instill fear of Allah in their hearts of his disobedient creatures, so that there may be left no excuse for those who deny Allah. If you too accept Islam, you will remain in command of your country, but if you refuse my call, you've got to remember that all your possessions are perishable. Okay, my horsemen will appropriate your land, and my prophethood will assume preponderance over your kingship. Amr bin al-As, who was chosen to carry the letter, narrated the following story that happened before he was admitted into the audience of Jafar. When I arrived in Oman, I contacted Abd, who was known to be more mild-tempered than his brother. So it looks like there's 2 kings of some sort. Amr, this is the name of the person. I am the messenger of Allah's prophets, coming to see both you and your brother Abd. the king, I suppose, you have to see my brother and read to him the letter you are carrying. He is my senior in both age and kingship. Incidentally, what is the purport of your mission, Amr? The Prophet calls upon you to believe in Allah alone, with no associate, discard any deities, and testify to the slavehood and messenger of Muhammad. Oh, Amr, you come from a noble family, but first of all, tell me, what was your father's attitude so it seems they're friends, because Umar, I think, is and as many of the um, Muslims at the time, they were merchants and they traveled a lot, so they kind of knew each other, I suppose. Umar, death overtook him before believing in Muhammad's mission. I wish now. Okay, I suppose it's quite long. So what I will do is, it does seem kind of like quite aggressive, the letter, doesn't it? Okay, so you will lose everything if you don't follow. You have to remember that, yes, there is you kind of have to balance these things. Like, okay, so why would one person, this Prophet Muhammad, say there's no compulsion in religion, at the same time seemingly threaten? I don't know, we have to read into like the history of something, or what happened. For whatever reason, maybe they're being attacked or something like that. um, but let me just quickly get a bit more to that. So, my horsemen will appropriate your land, and my prophet who will assume preponderance over your kingship. So maybe, yeah, it looks pretty scary stuff. And I'll read into it and try to find out into the history of it. But it has to be said that there are so many situations where Prophet Muhammad was very, always merciful towards people who were um, punishing him. So, for example, or not punishing, like persecuting is a proper word. So, for example, the fall of Mecca, people who were trying to kill him for like 13, no, about 20 years. They were killing him and his friends, Prophet Muhammad and his friends, for so many years, and his wife starved to death because of all sorts of persecution, endless persecution, and then he forgave them when he had power over them. And so many of them just became Muslim because they were like so uh, shocked and impressed that this person could be so kind to them despite their, being so horrible to him, Prophet Muhammad. So I suppose if you look into, if you think of it in sort of a realistic way, like, what's going on? This person is really, really kind. Why would he suddenly be really mean and whatever? If for example it was you, Alika, and you're always really, really kind to people, and then suddenly you wrote this letter like, I really, you're going to be in big trouble if you don't listen in, or something, um then you probably have to say there's some reason for it. Yeah. Yeah, but it's a good question, really good question. Okay, so what else have you got? If you make me a mod for a few seconds, I can send a link to the book of Sharia. Oh, okay. So it doesn't let you send links in the comments? Okay. I wonder. I have to do it on YouTube, I think, because I'm not doing it directly from YouTube. Are you commenting on YouTube, by the way, Alika? I'm guessing you are. Let me see. I think yes, you are, because it says YouTube next to it. Okay. I don't know how to do it. Let me just have a quick look on. Oh, we've got 6 minutes, but let me do it anyway. YouTube.com. No, it's going to be really messed up because, but I'll work on it. I think next time we'll try to. Can you? Uh, can you send it to me in the email as well? That would be really cool. I've got my. Um, I'm surprised you can't send a link or a comment on any of my YouTube videos. I always, I've always responded to your comments before. So if you could, in a comment on any of the YouTube videos, or email me on my contact page at bigquestionsanswer.com, and that would be good to see that. Whatever you want to send me. So if you make me a mod, I think we've talked about that. Okay. Yes, exactly. The letter has ended. Your reading commentary. Yes, that's true. Well, it wasn't commentary. It was kind of like what happened before and after in the situation is often helpful. Okay, so what does it say? I hope you will accept Islam, but if you do not, then you will lose your country, and my horsemen will invade your territory, and my prophecy, yeah, will dominate your country. Yeah. So yeah. Um and my horseman will invade you. So I'm guessing there must be some sort of situation, as I say, for some sort of provoked threat or something. And one way of saying that is maybe if you accept Islam or whatever, then that's a way of saying, um, you accept my dominance or something, because rather than you threatening us all the time, so imagine you're being attacked all the time. Maybe that's one way of saying it. Or you could make some other claim. You could say, okay, I'm not going to accept Islam, but I'm going to do something else. But what would that something else be? So I will look into it. It's a really good question. Okay. I can paste it in the comment section. I mean, yes. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I could have pasted the whole letter in the in the chat, I suppose. Yeah, okay. But maybe it's quite easy. I'll copy. Let me see. Let me paste that here. So hopefully people can see everywhere. That's a link to the letter if you want to read it. Would you mind reading the hadith regarding compulsion? So it's actually the idea about compulsion is actually from the Quran. It says there is no compulsion matters of religion. So this will be useful for people who want to learn more about Islam. You just go to alislam.org, and then I do /Quran, or you just click on Holy Quran, and then there's all sorts of Qurans in different languages. There's a little app um, that you can search bits, and you just write, I don't know, no compulsion, religion, I suppose. Let's throw that in, and then hopefully it'll come up. There you go. So it's a really nice app. It kind of highlights the stuff you want as well. There should be no compulsion in religion. Surely right has been distinct from wrong. So whoever refuses to be led, and those who transgress disbelieves in another, has surely grasped a strong handle. So, you know, Islam has been explained by this point. So right and wrong has been made clear, and so there's no need for any compulsion anyway. People have the choice to do whatever they want, basically. So that is, chapter 2, verse 257. Suppose I could click that and send that as a reference. There we go. Right. Okay. So this has been great so far. Let me try to whiz through. I can paste. Would you like me to read? Alika. Let me quickly see this one. But hadiths are historical documents from the sayings of Prophet Muhammad. Yes, that's true. I'm just saying that thing about compulsion is from the Quran. So it's not what we call a hadith. So people who don't know what hadith is, it means just a saying of Prophet Muhammad. Like you say there. What else have we got here? Okay, just read the letter in Arabic.